campaign manager is interested in determining the average age of voters in the state of New York. The entire group of voters in New York is an example of either A, a sample, B, a statistic, C, a population, or D, a parameter. Now, one of the most basic distinctions you're going to need to make in this course is between populations, which include all members of the group that it is that you're focused on, or you could say the entire group, as we've done here, whereas a sample deals with any subset, any smaller group from within the population. Now, in a question, they're probably not going to use the word subset when they're trying to identify a sample, but what they will talk about is they'll talk about a small group of people being randomly selected to be part of a survey or part of a study. So when they talk about selecting a group randomly from the population, that means that they're not including the entire population. They're including only a subset. Now, that's not what's happening here. Here, we're supposed to identify who the entire group of voters in New York is. And that is the entire group. It's all members of the people we're interested in, the voters in the state of New York. So we've identified here that we've got a population. We do not have a sample, because a sample would not be talking about the entire group. Now, these other two options, statistic and parameter, well, we'll deal with those more in another question, but basically a statistic is some kind of a characteristic or a property of a sample. For example, if I took a sample of people and I measured their average height, that would be called a statistic. Not because it's an average, but specifically because it is something that describes my sample. If I instead am looking at a population and I have some measurement or some property of the population in mind, that is a parameter. In fact, there's a parameter here. The average age of voters in the state of New York. The average age of the population, well, that is a parameter. Parameters are properties or characteristics of the population. That's not what we were supposed to focus on in this question, but there is a parameter that's being mentioned here. So we are not dealing with identifying properties of either a sample or a population. We're not dealing with a sample, but instead the entire group of voters in New York is an example of a population, C.